Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. This is a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries and exit planning advisors from across the country. And joining me on this segment is Erin Fenstermaker. She's with Birdseye Advisory. Erin, welcome to the program.
Hi, thanks for having me, Mark.
Erin, tell us a little bit about your work and tell us specifically who are those types of clients that you specialize in helping?
Well, Birdseye Advisory is actually a boutique investment bank that focuses exclusively on the pet industry. And so, we think the pet industry is the best industry out there, not only because of the great returns that it's having in general, but also because of the great founders and entrepreneurs that have started businesses within there. And so I actually started as an operator for 20 years, later got into consulting specifically in the pet industry. And then a longtime colleague brought me in when she got into investment banking about a decade ago, because the skill sets that I had were very needed during a sale process. And so, things like marketing a business during a sale process, the due diligence side of things, knowing all of the questions a buyer is potentially going to ask and knowing the answers in advance is just critical if you want to be able to have a successful sale from beginning to end.
So business owners are great at running and growing a business, but exiting a business is a whole nother world. So how much thought have they put into exiting and selling their businesses?
Oh my gosh, it varies dramatically. I can tell you, selling your business is kind of like showing up to your final exam, hoping that you're going to get an A. But if you haven't done any preparation for it, you're likely not going to do that well. And so some people just don't realize that they should be looking at their business sale like that there's actually preparation that's involved, and that they really need to understand all of the different factors that a third party is going to use to evaluate them, so that they are looking at their own business by those same criteria. One of the reasons a lot of businesses don't sell is because an owner may have a very inflated view of the value of their business. And that's easy to understand because it's the baby that they have, been growing for many, many years. But there are some very objective criteria that you should be aware of and know how that's going to impact the valuation that you receive, and know if you aren't doing that great in those particular areas, that you should really work on those areas prior to exiting.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Let's talk about some of these areas. What are the key areas that they should be thinking about? And maybe a 10,000-foot view, this must be a broad question, but what are the areas that you help them with when you join forces and help them with their exit?
Well, typically, if we do an exit planning project, you look at a business from two different perspectives. First, you look at it from what we call the business attractiveness. And those are the way a third party is going to look at you. So they look at your financials, and they look at your brand, and they look at the niche that you happen to be in your industry. They look at what your growth rate is, things like that, amongst many other things, but that's a handful. The other factor that we look at is what we call an internal look. And it values your exit readiness. And so we look at things like, do you have your contracts for all vendors, customers, and employees? Do you have a lot of customer, what are your customer relationships? Are they good customer relationships? What's the culture like in your company? How are your financials? Are they a hot mess? Or are they, have they been done very well and they're reviewed monthly, and, see your taxes are all up to date? All of these kind of internal things, and especially business processes, so that if your company was sold, that somebody has a manual as to how to run it. If you don't have any of these things, or some of those things you're a bit disorganized about, that can really impact the ability for that deal to potentially close. And if you find some really unfortunate or bad things, it can actually knock the value down of the business before closing. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to go through a sale process and find out along the way that there's some warts, about their business that they didn't know about.
Now we're coming out of this pandemic, and it's affected businesses in different ways. What have you seen, and how has it impacted the planning for exiting during this period?
That's an interesting question, because in the pet industry, if you've read a lot about what's going on with it, overall, the pandemic was very good for pet product based businesses. The service-based businesses are the ones that really suffered, those like dog walking and pet boarding and grooming and things like that. Those have rebounded to some degree. But in terms of how it impacts exiting, I think a lot of people realized, oh my gosh, my business is not infallible. This pandemic, it's a once in a lifetime event. And, most people don't plan for those kind of things, but there's a lot, the 50% of all businesses go or need to be sold because of what we call the 5 Ds. And that's death, disability, divorce, disagreement, and distress. And so those are 5 reasons that your business might need to sell, even if you don't want it to. And a pandemic, you might as well add the pandemic in there, even though it doesn't start with a D. And people are starting to realize that there is uncertainty to business, that maybe, they thought the pet industry was just going to go up and up and up and up forever. And then they realize, oh my gosh, I actually am not bulletproof. Maybe I should shore up my business. So if I did have to sell it tomorrow, that I was prepared and that I didn't have to wait 6 to 12 months or 36 months to try to fix things. So I think that's where a lot of business owners have changed because of the pandemic, because we've had a once in a lifetime negative, for a lot of people experience, and it changes your view about really everything. And if you're a business owner, it really makes you think about the future.
Great insight. Erin, what inspired you to get into this field and help business owners? You told us a little bit about how you got together in this industry, but take us back a little bit. How did you get started?
Well, it's funny, if you actually look at my business career, it looks like I was planning this all along very meticulously, but I was not. I've always loved working with small and medium-sized business owners. I happen to have some skill sets that a lot of founder entrepreneurs don't have. And so, if we teamed up, we would do really, really well. And then when I started working in mergers and acquisitions, I experienced in the beginning of our work together at Birdseye, we had some buyers that came to the table that weren't prepared, and we had deals fall apart. And nobody wants to spend 6 months of their life going through a sales process to not have the happy ending. And so, I'm a planner and I like to be prepared when I take tests. So, that's where exit planning and becoming a CEPA, and that's the certification that I hold, became just an obvious choice, because A, I want better prepared clients. B, because I want to close those sales and we make the commission that we do for selling the business. But also we want a more seamless and less bumpy road during that 6-month sale process. And so all of those things, plus the other thing that we found, if you prepare, you actually can get a better valuation. So it's a win-win for us. On the advisor side, it's a win-win for the business owner, because they're going to be less stressed, less distracted, higher chance of a successful outcome. Why wouldn't anyone want to do that? And the fact that I had some skills already that just made it obvious that I could lead an exit planning process, are what led me into that field. And my partner at Birdseye, Carol Frank, we're so glad that we did that, also because it helps us talk to business owners sooner in the process. We want to talk to them as they're preparing and have them get to know us and realize we're wonderful to work with, that we know what we're doing. And hey, when you do want to sell, we're here to help you, help you through that process if you want to hire us.
You may not have planned this, but you were like born for it. It sounds like to me. Erin, before I ask you my last question, is there anything that I didn't think to ask you that you feel is important to share with business owners listening now that are considering exiting or selling their business now or in the near future?
Yeah, the one thing that I caution people about, because people like to talk, business owners like to talk to each other, and they'll say, hey, this business did this many millions and this much in EBITDA, and they got this much revenue. So they try to equate what their business might get because of metrics they may have heard out there. And I absolutely do not love that tendency happens. And I highly, highly encourage them to go, yes, the financial aspect is critically important and your financials need to be very good. But the other thing is you don't know what's under the hood of a lot of businesses until you look. So you can't just look at their financials and make assumptions about a value of a business. If somebody is giving you valuations of your business without doing any look under the hood, you can't take a lot of, it doesn't have a lot of weight. You really have to do both of those things in tandem. And that is what will give you a much more realistic impression of what your business is worth on the open market. And so that's just one thing that I have seen happen many, many times. I'm like, yes, their financials look wonderful, but I'm not going to think they're a home run until I learn a little bit more about what's going on under the hood.
Sage advice. Erin, for folks listening now that would love to speak with you, they know they need to get their stuff in order. How do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Yeah, they can find me at the website for Birdseye Advisory, which is birdseyeadvisory.com. My email is Erin, which is ERIN at birdseyeadvisory.com. I suggest you reach out to me that way, especially if you're in the pet industry and looking to sell in the coming several years. We would love to chat with you.
Erin, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you,
Likewise.
Birdseye Advisory, and for all of your clients.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, Mark.
That was Erin Fenstermaker with Birdseye Advisory, and this segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.